numbers which are there in terms of, let's start by saying migrant workers, I think it runs into anywhere from 70 to 100 million, and nobody has a real count. Now the migrant workers, what do they do when they come? They are crowding in small shelters in very large cities, which is essentially an urban slum, and that phenomena has been going on forever. Second is, since they consider themselves as circular economy workers, which means they are sending most of their earnings to their villages, and they are creating urban health issues because the urban health issue was never addressed to the extent it should be, and they never identified with the city, and loyalty to their homes and villages is the factor.
Absolutely.
Now, when this pandemic appeared, so they are wanting to, in an extreme hurry, go back to their homes. And the consequence of this was a complete social and an economic burden on the India's development strategy, because they got to take them back, and the emotional connect with their villages, with their families is paramount in their mind, irrespective of who is paying or not paying. And then the disruption to the economy because of the pandemic is very visible. And in our case, the disruption to the economy came even before the pandemic, for whatever reasons, whether it is GST, whether it is demonetization, etc., etc. But the fact is, we made it worse by this migrant workers wanting to go back, going back, etc. Now, if we have to address this urban issue as a long-term problem-solving methodology as they begin to come back, the hostels for these people in terms of where they can stay, or they are called as circular migrants, is an absolute must. Second is accessible public health facilities. Without public health facilities, they are not going to be staying on top of each other. 40 people, 100 people sharing a toilet in a place like Dharavi or any of these slums is unacceptable completely. And the problem made it worse because by a lockdown, you are not allowing them to go, and if they are working in a factory, they could have used the toilets there. Access to public distribution system is again one which we cannot afford to neglect, because that was the other one which was very badly needed. And lastly, the transportation, where the railways had to transport them or the buses had to transport them. So we need to address some of these things. And as some of the workers are not going to come back in a hurry, and assuming even 60% of that come back, the states are trying to put together some plans. But then we must start the talent scouting at the villages, and the mobile training centers can skill them or capture their skills who have gone back. Now, the other method to capture the skills, which I thought the railways could have done very easily, was when they are booking the passengers, when they are taking the passengers, they got the records, including the Aadhaar number, etc., etc. They could have easily captured the skills, and the point of, where they get down, that exactly is the village connect, and from that small town to the village connect where the railway station is there, we could have captured this data very effectively. And the National Skill Development Corporation or the corporate CSR, etc., could have addressed this issue in terms of skilling. And we have been trying to push them to say that please capture that and try to solve the skills problem through this kind of a methodology. And also create an electronic digital platform where the rural-urban job networks, where a digital platform can say in this village, based on this kind of a railway data or the data itself, where the jobs are or what kind of jobs are possible, and then match the capabilities of these people to the job. Because even when they were migrant workers, they acquired a certain level of skill. Yeah. And that must be definitely used for betterment, and some of them will come back. So this is the process I thought with regard to the migrant workers we need to do. One is to understand the problem. What is driving them back to their home because of the emotional connect, and the public distribution system, public health facilities, and the access to the public health facilities, transportation, and ultimately the skilling are what is going to do. Those that are coming back, in addition to that, the corporate sector or the MSME sector, which is having them, has to own a level of responsibility for the skilling. Then when we look at the MSME sector, they are themselves in a lot of challenges. 11 crore employed in India and they contribute about 28% of our GDP. I think the larger corporates must train some of these employees in the MSME because they are part of their supply chain. And the troubled sector in terms of what it is going through in terms of financing, which is internal mostly. Formal mechanisms of financing is not happening. The lending unwillingness persists and payments are pending. So the data on some of the published one I was seeing only 15% of the 70 crore was met by formal channels. So the MSME sector, unless the demand picks up, the financing takes place and the skilling takes place, the long-term future, if it is going to be a critical part of our economy, it has to be addressed very clearly with all the which I articulated. Now coming to other one which I missed out is the Manrega. Manrega is about 11 crores in terms of the scale. And for 100 days of work, one member of a BPL family, the daily wage has been enhanced to 212 rupees per day. And the budget allocation, as we heard, was about 100,000 crores. And we had to include skill development as a part of this because even in rural India where they are doing, whether it's with regard to the environmental protection, access to the forest area in terms of the human-animal conflict, all of these can be addressed. More importantly, the water and water for everybody. I think there are enough possibilities for getting them skilled to work. The other one is, of course, the agricultural sector, which has almost 25 crores and 15.4% of our GDP. And the land depletion has taken place. And then this whole area of food chain from the farm to the table, and what kind of logistics, supply chain requirements, and the capabilities that can be built has to be really thought through if it has to be successful, including the farming itself in terms of IT, IoT, the sensor-based monitoring of the farms, and things like the technology in terms of satellite-based technology, remote monitoring, remote sensing, etc., can have an enormous impact. The construction, 5 crore workers are almost deployed, and registered is about 2.5 crores. So whether it's Tata, whether it's L&T, whether it's PAN IIT, whether it is NSDC, through multiple mechanisms, we have to scale that up to do the construction worker. The biggest sector which can throw out opportunities is the handloom weavers or the artisans. We are talking about almost 45 lakhs in the handloom weaver sector and 70 lakhs in the artisans. And how do you connect the market needs with their capabilities? But more importantly, the packaging, branding, and the technologies to connect to the market so that this becomes a very critical component of our well-being in the future. I think I don't have to dwell on more. I think I'd like to dwell on the public health, because the capacity building in the public health is going to be very, very crucial for every state, every center, where the infrastructure skill, namely the Kerala model of turning the public health primary healthcare center to a family healthcare center, which the finance minister or the health minister of that state articulated very beautifully of their model. But then it has been sustained over a period of how many years since the time they got the statehood, they are putting their process in place. Community is a part of any solution which they have implemented, where the community owns the things, which is very different from what the other states are not doing. I think the models have to be understood, models have to be seen, models have to be taken help of without any hesitation. I think the other ones are the affordable healthcare in terms of remote connect with the healthcare practitioners. The digital platform in the healthcare has again made a very, very big dent, very scale-up possibilities. Then manufacturing jobs in terms of what we have seen, whether it is the Tata Group with the PPEs, the ventilators, the other groups, etc., the Mahindras. But more importantly, affordable devices and the manufacturing in the healthcare segment, more importantly, the affordable healthcare segment is going to take a big need, and self-sufficiency can also be achieved in this. Because a lot of innovation, entrepreneurs will be more than happy to work in this area if it is going to create scale opportunity in a country and export possibilities in the future. I thought the overall picture I will give you, starting from the migrant workers to the
So
agriculture.
who will actually go around building these hostels, for example, that you're talking about?
Yeah.
I think it's a very good question. I think if I'm going to employ somebody, either I'll have to rent that or I'll have to ask third parties to build it, but more importantly, on a rental model rather than on a capital intensive model.
So you don't think that they can come back to the Dharvi kind of places? You think that's not an option anymore, is it?
No, still somebody will come back because the desperation will drive them to come back and see that, okay, we have faced this, some may die and some may survive, etc. And we may become immune and there may be a vaccination in the future or whatever. But I think the long-term solution is not to just let them loose and then suffer. The behavioral part of it, the social aspects of it, through education, through training and through skilling will have to be brought in. If you are converted instead of 15 lakh or whatever number of people live in Dharavi to 5 lakhs instead of the 15 lakhs, you have solved part of the problem. That's the way I would look at it. You cannot solve it in one shot saying that from tomorrow you'll get the hostels. That's not going to happen.
And how will you actually do the training of these people? Can it be done in the village? Do we have enough facilities right now to train them in the village or not?
Yeah, we can create that through mobile training centers, through the PAN IIT model, which is set up in every single district in Jharkhand as an example, through L&D wherever they have L&D, or through the Tata Group or the Mahindras. I think the corporate have to step in to say that we'll scale it within closer to proximity to our places, either through CSR funding or the funding corporate itself as part of their operations and business. And they should use NGOs, civil society, as well as they should use on their own capabilities.
So let's say something like the Tata Group, how many people can you skill, let's say, in 6 months through these mobile centers or CSCs? You know, the government has CSCs. You'll do it through the CSC also?
Yeah, you can align with the CSCs as an example, but I don't know the numbers. I can get it to you. The Tata Strive has about 65, 69 centers, which is for non-profit. They get the funding from the Tata Trust and other non-profit CSR kind of a thing. So they are doing that in quite a few areas. Their capacity, if I remember, is they have built up to about 20 or 25 lakhs.
And were you happy with the NSDC experience in terms of skilling? Or do you think we need to change some rules?
I think the NSDC experience at that time it was just the beginning of anything to be set up. As a result, hardly anything or nothing existed. Even to define what is skills SSCs, what are the kind of standards, what are the kind of norms, what are the kind of skills which will be in the demand side of it rather than just do the supply side of it. What is supply, what is demand, what is skilling, everything had to be redefined totally or defined totally. Second was the ITIs had to be resurrected because the ITIs were in a very, very terrible shape. The ownership of the ITIs with the state government had taken place. With the result, the state governments had to take skilling as a very important activity if they had to attract business into their state itself. So we did a lot of district level interventions. There was a lot of learning, but I think we are reaching a stage now where at least capture of data at a district level, that's what NSDC tells me, is possible to say that what is the kind of total informal, formal training. Still majority closer to 85 to 90% is informal and only a smaller portion is the formal, and how are we going to push it into the formal sector and where is the money going to come from, because they expect money is going to be the most tightest need. Very difficult, but it has to happen. Because if there are new sectors, whether it is defense, whether it is space, whether it is atomic energy, whether it is the other ones, like power, renewable power, I think there the ownership has to shift with the players who are going to be participating in the demand side and doing it with the state support or state interventions in terms of policies. Those are very critical.
So far we hardly have any skilling worth the name, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of scale with regard to the requirements, we have very little. But I think the direction is correct. the private initiatives, the CSR initiatives, and the number of players that are there are very, very good now, which is very encouraging, because everyone sees this to a commonality of purpose, and the community has to own it up to say that we need this if we have to survive. We need it if we have to be dependent on ourselves. And that is what even in a public health area like Kerala has demonstrated, so that similarly the skills and the capabilities in each of these areas had to be owned collectively rather than leaving it to the government or leaving it to the corporate sector or leaving it to the CSR funds or whatever it is, or to the state government. I think the thing that has united all of us through this pandemic, the only learning I would say is everybody knows we are all in it together, because it can strike any of us irrespective of the strata in the society. Nothing which can tell you that if you don't do anything, nothing will happen to you and it will affect only the people. But I think the experience has been, whether it is a developed country, developing country, state, district, poorest of the poor to the richest of the rich, it doesn't matter. And the hospitals are an indication of that. So I think that must play out, and that must be repeatedly told at any advocacy, any forums, any educational institutions, any technical institutions, I would say.
So to come back to the problem of the migrants, so like you said, you know, the desperation will drive them back. So, I mean, I would think at least 60-70% would have to come back. What will they do in the villages? Isn't it?
I think that's what I said. You've got to capture their talent. The village level economy, if it is going to be on a sustainable basis, agriculture as an example, agriculture to the distribution in terms of reach to the market, in terms of what are the kind of capabilities we can create, aggregation of X number of villages in a district, and the district level investment by the corporates or the various people, entrepreneurs will become the job creation engine. The artisans we talked about, that can be artisans, weavers, etc., handloom, etc., can be a job creation engine. The rural marketing, rural branding, rural issues with regard to taking the products, whether it is a soap, whether it is a sanitizer, etc., the water related jobs, because those are needed as we go into the water management of the whole country.
So is there any sign that this sorry, Shobna, carry on.
No. So, you know, when they come back now, they'll go back to their respective plants, etc. Sia Bajaj or
I think, yeah, you're right. But the plants themselves are beginning to rethink how they should treat these people.
Exactly.
I think that has to play out, and that has to be pushed. So there is a demand by these workers on the people who employ them is, if you don't give me the facilities, I can't come, because if I'm affected or infected, I'm going to spread it to you guys. We are common purpose in this, so let's look at it together so that the conditions for us when we stay and when we come to work and go back home are taken care of the right way. And that's why some of the factories may say you can stay within the factory itself. Some of the people are, IT sector is an exception because working out of home is a possibility there, but a manufacturing or some of these jobs can never be done out of home.
Yeah. So, but you think because, you know, the onus is now on the managements to create all these hygienic facilities, so the costs will also go up. Plus, there is always a mental tension, you know, of maintaining all these facilities, etc. You think that manufacturers now will look to use, you know, less and less labor as we go along in the next few years?
I think that's the trend across the world. If you see anything from undeveloped to underdeveloped to a developed evolution, the automation and the incorporation of automation into the job function is going to be very much. And manufacturing is no exceptions. Whether it is the Internet of Things or the artificial intelligence or the connected devices on the shop floor or in the enterprise is going to be a way of life. Our responsibility through our education, skilling, and the technology inputs which we have to give, whether the person is from the rural India or is migrating into the urban place or an urban people who are there, I think this has to be addressed through an enormous amount of money into the education and development. And how do we in the interim do this is an evolution, but I think there's no choice but to do this over a period of 5, 10, 15 years. And policies have to reflect the need for every individual. If today 400 million are in the thing, can we take it to the next 400 million? How do we take it? All these are issues which are policy interventions as well as money to put into this and responsibility collectively. Otherwise, it's not going to change.
Is there some kind of a model which says that typically a country should spend 1% of GDP on skilling, or 2% or 3%? In Singapore they do this, in Australia they do this. Is there some order of magnitude that we have to work with?
No, I would think that anything less than 5 to 10% is very little.
My God.
Because you need capabilities. We are saying we want to be a world-class economy. We want to be a global supply chain. We want to be satisfying at quality and affordable prices. You got to spend on the skills and the associated equipment that are required, both in terms of a digital platform, hands-on experience, on-the-job experience, apprenticeship, you name it. I think we need that kind of a 5% at least.
And how much do you reckon we spend today, say the corporates and with the CSR, everything all together, NSDC, ITIs, all together, how much would India spend on skilling today?
Probably
Less
1%.
than 1%?
Yeah, less than 1.
So, I mean, you know, because unless you do skilling, there are not going to be enough, meaning people will not be employable, or that is a frightening thought. You know, even to man a call center, you need a basic skill. Even to be a construction worker in future, you're going to need, you know, today it may not be. So, I mean,
yeah, but when I saw the experiment by the Pan IIT guys in terms of having achieved scale in Jharkhand with all the districts today covered, whether it is the construction workers, whether it's the manufacturing workers like the fitters, etc., welders, or a services sector like nurses, I think they've created an enormous amount of goodwill and the capability. And largely, the fund has come from the corporate sector. I think these are experiments which you have to replicate rather than start afresh.
So it's a successful experiment in Jharkhand.
Very successful. Similarly, the Tata Strive is a successful, and my LRT is a very successful experiment. Probably Tisco or Tata Steel in Jamshedpur is a successful experiment. Mahindra, I'm sure, will have something like that.
You know, there's one thing in them acquiring a skill, and generally what you see today, that skill level is not a good level. You know, a nurse of today is not as good as a nurse of 20 years ago. You know, you see this across professions. You know, even in the organized sector, even with white collar workers, and the level of any knowledge or any skill is very poor. Most people are not employable.
I think people are got used to the thing. Most of them can be skilled on the job. And that model has to accelerate in terms of change, where a basic level, that's why we said that start introducing the skills at the school curriculum itself. You cannot be, after you complete the 12th there, you can't do anything, then you push them in the skills ecosystem. Give that pathway after the 8th grade, so 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 5 years or 4 years, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. Do the skilling completely and give them alternate pathways and a compulsory skilling, both in terms of theory and practice. That's when we can get the people who are really passionate and wanting to make a difference. That's what is the education policy going to reflect. That's what I heard. And this is a very fundamental shift.
Yeah. We need to do that. We need to start early so that people also get a chance to discover what they have an aptitude for.
No, Rajiv Gandhi tried to do this with the 10th, but it just failed after that. You know, we didn't follow through. His policy in the 10th.
No, we didn't follow through. Yeah, I think they always took the shortcuts. Even when I was watching on TV, some of the conditions in that Okla Industrial Estate was shown. I think you see that the fellows are exporting a lot of goods. When you look at the facilities, on the images that were shown or on the live television broadcast that was shown, I would say, are we in the 20th century or are we in an archaic environment where the conditions are so pathetic? But then they can always turn around and say, I don't have the money and I can't pay, I've not got any funding. But those are not the reasons. You got to give a basic level of hygiene, health, and public facilities. So how many of them in this 11 crore or whatever we talked about, in the, not 11 crore, in the MSME sector, which is about 11 crores. And how many of them are really 62 crore enterprises are really fit for use, fit for, from a people point of view, are good to go.
How many
It's
of
not
them are
like-
fit for, sorry?
Fit for employees to go and work there. And this pandemic must have shown them that I'm not going to work in these conditions. So even if they wanted to get the workers, unless the guy is so desperate, he needs the job, he's not going to go. It's like manual scavenging. Why does a guy go for a manual scavenging? It has nothing to do with, that's a job. And he has nothing else. It's so desperate that he goes and does that. So we had to create a movement. We had to create through advocacy that it's your responsibility to make sure your workers are safe, sound, and clean energy, because otherwise it's going to affect you. Unless you get that feeling that I'm also in danger, people are not going to make a change. And that's what this pandemic has shown, because none of us have experienced to the kind of extent which is a global in nature, where it is coming from, where it is touching you, when it is touching you, to what degree you are going to be affected. Everything is unknown till the vaccine is completely found. And it's not going to be easy even if the vaccine is found. To get that billions vaccinated is not going to be easy at all, because manufacturing, availability, patents, cost, everything is going to play out. We are just waiting for that day.
So, given what
And
you're
this is the
saying,
first time. Also, it is the first time where the model has changed, where one company doing from drug discovery from start to finish over a period of a decade, because of the global collaboration of the scientists and the platforms and the technology, they are looking at 18 to 24 months where a drug is going to be available or a vaccine is going to be available. That's the kind of change we are expecting, where the whole circular way of doing things with all of us has to play out very clearly. And I don't think, please.
So, sorry, from what you're saying, then, eventually, it's going to become a very high cost operation. And a whole lot of industry will also have to shut down because they will not be able to offer workers the standards they need.
I don't think it will become a high cost operation if you optimize the usage of your space, the technology, and the number of people you put which are skilled. The cost will come down because of the scale of demand. When we talked about a PPE, when we talked about a ventilator, when we talked about a mask, when we talked about any other devices, when we talked about education through a digital platform, the scale of the operation is so huge. You can charge 500 rupees a month or 250 rupees a month, but the kind of numbers you have reached automatically makes up for whatever you want. The school need not be in a physical infrastructure. The school can be under a tree with a nice internet connectivity or a broadband connectivity. Why not?
Shanti Niketan.
Yes.
So you're saying in a sense that, for example, you could have, let's say in Okhla, which you talked about, you could have one person setting up hostels, which everybody uses, rather than every factory looking for a hostel.
Correct. And they can share together, because if there are
community.
If there are
Sulabh
clusters,
Shauchalaya does it, yeah.
Okay. So the scale will give you the economics.
Yeah, the scale is economics. This country is one of scale.
Do we need a separate minister or somebody else who's going to look after this transition? Because it is huge what you're talking about. It requires a very different way of looking at things.
My own feeling is, let's give it to the community and let's give it to the public to make sure we are containable where they do it, rather than saying that ministry is required for policy making so that there is no hindrance.
Yeah.
But asking them to manage and run the show, we are passing from the center to the state, from the state to the district. So the empowerment has to keep going down rather than coming back to.
But we need to give them a lot more money in that case. You can't be squeezing them of money.
Yeah, money has to be given, money has to be generated, and money has to be shared. I agree. These are all complex issues, but I wish I had a magic wand. Just like the pandemic came,
Yeah.
pandemic can't go away. But it's a scary moment for all of us. It has given a lot of reflection for everybody. That's the point we are trying to make. And that will make people change. And there'll be enough people who want to push the change.
You think that enough corporate sector people actually feel as shaken,
Yeah,
or they'll?
Yeah.
Yes. They're talking quite
Yeah.
a bit. Yes.
Okay.
They're talking quite a bit.
So you think there can be a partnership, like you're saying, you know, like in some of the backward areas, the corporates go, they team up with the local authorities, and then, you know, they initiate the skilling or the training, you know, in the with the sort of objective that the plant will ultimately come up there. Because then the workers also
Yeah,
will be
the
close
natural
to their
resource. Correct. I think the shift will definitely see with some leaders will say, instead of the workers coming to the factory in a remote location, from a remote location to a big city, how do we take the work into the smaller places where the work can shift? That's the thinking that is going to happen.
You feel it will happen?
I think it'll happen.
Because broadband connectivity is there, and
Correct.
because
And the push, like if we had a mobile revolution, if we had changes in the television that penetrated across the country, access to information, access to data, then I think people are going to ask for that, demand that, because I having a piece of land from the mind of a worker or an agricultural family, rather say that I'll stay and do my agriculture in addition to doing some of these sophisticated jobs, and the factory is within a 10-20 kilometer radius, he'll be more than happy to work there, and he's willing to take that change.
And I'll be happy with lower wages also.
Yeah. Even in the cooperative, for example, I gave, if you take just the Belgaum, Hubli, or that surrounding area, and the IT sector looked at, there are 100 foundries in that small region. The kind of job, the kind of capabilities you can create in front of just the foundries staying in isolation, including the services sector, the economy. And why would I stay in Pune, or why would I stay in Bombay? Belgaum afford me that kind of a capability. That's the kind of point I'm making.
Yeah. So there, you know, this reverse migration, you think that, you know, if you can call it that, do you think, like, say there are, you know, 100 million migrants today who have come from the villages and are in the big cities, or, you know, the like Chimpri, you know, where Bajaj Auto is Chichiri and all those Pimpri and
Pimpri, Chinchwad, yeah.
Yeah, Chinchwad. So you think that, you know, at least 20-30% of these will go back, and the companies will take that work to the village, you know, villages or small towns? You think that's possible?
If they are leaders in terms of the workers, supervisors who know hands-on what to do, and they say we are willing to do this entrepreneurship and create a model, I'm sure the corporates will be more than happy, because the work can shift to the location rather than the workers shifting to the factory from wherever they are.
But what is an example of, let's say, a Bajaj Auto? What work can you actually shift? Sorry, Shobna. What is the work that you can actually shift is what I wanted to know.
No, if you take a Jamshedpur or a Chinchwad, Pune and Pimpri, what was it when they started? Please look at that. What was existing there? Nothing. Where did they source the labor from? From the adjoining villages. I think that's the model we are saying. Take it to the tier 2, tier 3 cities and push it further down. And your supply chain, even if it is a 50 people worker location in a village, and then that feeds into a district, that feeds into a state or whatever it is, into a factory, those are the kind of things that we are talking about, which will happen.
So you're saying a Bajaj Auto, for example, should start getting its ancillary units closer to the village, rather than trying to put everything in.
Yeah, because even on a risk, what happens if the cyclone kind of thing which happened in Bombay a few days ago, whether it was Alibag, whether it was Raigad, whether it was Kandala, Lonavala, the extensive damage. Now, if it's going to take me another 2 months to restore the power infrastructure, and then the factory, the damages, etc. And if I had a plant which is somewhere near Nagpur or whatever it is, it will help me from a logistic supply chain point of view without any disruption. So people have to look at disruption, not just man-made disruptions, but also natural disruptions which are happening more frequently than ever.
Which is what the global players are doing versus vis-a-vis China. That we can't put everything in China. Let's look at Vietnam. Let's look at India. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah.
So there are some more questions. Send me.
Yeah,
But
sure,
I think
sure.
I'm so
And-
happy to see both of you. And safe and sound. Please take care of yourselves.
You too,
Yes.
sir.
Don't
Thank
ask
you,
me to
Damodarai.
come to Delhi and suffer. I can't move out of Bombay, so there's no question of coming to Delhi.
Yes.
I can't go to
yes.
Chennai.
And sir, where do you
When
get
do you,
more?
when do you
Yeah.
sense, you wanted Sunil?
I wonder where do you
details
get
of-
more details of this Jharkhand thing that you're talking about?
Project, yeah.
I'll send you. I'll ask the PAN-IIT guy to call you also. His name is
Okay.
Kalyan.
Okay,
I'll
that
make
is
sure he
fantastic.
calls you.
Yeah, that is
He's a
fantastic.
very nice guy. We have helped him, supported him, and given him a lot of advice. Even 2 weeks ago, I had a call with him and Mr. Muthuraman, who is the chairman of their PAN-IIT.
Oh, Mr. Muthuraman. Okay.
He always
Okay,
keeps
if-
saying that you pushed me into this, but I'm happy you pushed me into this because now I can see the difference.
Where does he live, Mr. Muthuraman?
He lives in Bangalore.
Oh, okay. Who heads the Tata CSR for all this? You said no that they do.
Yeah, that is that Anita Rajan, who used to work with me. She's the one who's the CEO of Tata Stray. I'll connect you with her also. I think I met her, but I can connect you with her.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. You stay
Thank you.
safe.
Thank you
Bye.
so
Have a
much.
good
Yeah,
weekend.
thank,
Thank you. You too.
yeah,
Bye-bye.
thank you.